32 ACP versus 32 Smith & Wesson long. And what we have today is our Remington ammunition, our round nose ammunition. So our 32 ACP is a full metal jacket, which is very typical, and our 32 long is a lead round nose, which, because it's a revolver cartridge, is also very typical. Our 32 ACP is a 71 grain full metal jacket rated at 905 feet per second. Our 32 Smith & Wesson long is a 98 grain lead round nose rated at 705 feet per second. So a lot slower. However, we are quite a bit heavier with that 32 Smith & Wesson long. So I'm going to use my kel-tec P32 to test the 32 ACP and my Ruger LCR and 327 Federal Magnum to test the 32 Smith & Wesson long. So I've tested a lot of full metal jacket 32 ACPs, and I like to, keep going with this and see if there's one that we can find that's, more powerful than the rest, because most of the ones that we've tested here, they say they're at a certain velocity and it comes nowhere near that. So I'm looking just to find something that maybe is a little bit closer to rate of velocity out of that P32 and does, better than a lot of the other ones. So we'll see what we get with our Remington UMC and WheelGun performance. So we're going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. So we're going to go into plain clear ballistics, no denim or anything like that, or rip simulation in the way, to get our best potential for penetration, see what we get in our plain clear ballistic shot. And then after that, I'm going to do more of a real world simulation. 4 layers of sweatshirt on this first 3-inch piece here that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, we're going to have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard right here after 3 inches to represent hitting ribs or sternum. 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard at the back of 16 inches to represent hitting back ribs, and that'll be more of our real world simulation. Clear ballistics is roughly a half representation of flesh, so 3 inches is more like 1.5 inches in a real target, and 16 inches is more like 8 inches in an actual living target. So it's more like 9.5 inches we're trying to represent. And if we go through that back rib simulation, it's likely that could pass through an attacker. And after our ballistic shell test, I will shoot at the steel target to see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So let's get started with this test. First up, we have our 32 Smith & Wesson long 98 grain lead round nose rated at only 705 feet per second. Let's see how I get in my little 1.875 inch LCR here. 5 yards from the target. .612. 634. 635. 624. 656. So definitely below rated velocity, but that's probably rated through a 4-inch barrel, as well that's less than a 2-inch. Now we're going to use our P32, I think it's 2.5-inch barrel, to test our 71 grain full metal jacket UMC here. So rated at 905 feet per second. I don't know what barrel length. We'll see how close we get to 905 in my little kel-tec here. Our average round we get through this with full metal jacket is roughly 750 feet per second. So we'll see how close we get to that. .798. 832. 807. 813. 831, 854, 823. So I guess there's a good reason why I do that. Every other round I've tested, that like American Eagles, all the other ones, Cellular and Bellot, Fiocchi, 71 to 73 grains, they generally clock in anywhere between like 720 and 760 feet per second. This one's actually a lot more powerful. So very interesting. Let's hit our ballistic shell block and see how these two compare. All right, first up, our best potential shot into plain clear ballistics, no rip simulation to slow down penetration or anything like that. Let's see what we get with our lead round nose 32 long. All right. Set that with our 32 ACP. Let's go take a look. Wow, I was not expecting that much of a difference there. I don't know. I don't recall getting in that second block with other 32 ACPs through our plain clear ballistic shot. I mean, I may have, but I just don't recall that ever happening before. So we definitely have a good amount of penetration with that 32 ACP. Now, 32 long, it's apparent that it did tumble because I'm looking at that bullet, it is backwards. The 32 ACP is not backwards. Even though there is marks that would indicate tumbling, it could have tumbled and straightened back out, but it's straight now. And, you know, with a shorter bullet, it is less likely that it's going to tumble, and a longer bullet that's heavier, like that 32 long, it's more likely it's going to tumble. But what we got here is, with our 32 long, we got about 11 3/4 from my view. Camera parallax will make you think that's like 12 1/4, but this camera stretches a little bit. We're actually at 11 3/4 from my front on view, so a little bit shallow with our penetration there. And with our 32 ACP, we actually have about 21 inches of penetration. But you know, that's definitely over penetrating, but generally if you put in ribs and stuff like that, you're not going to get that. So we'll find out now. We'll put on our sweatshirt material, put in our rib simulation or sternum simulation and our back ribs, and see how these do in more of a real world simulation. All right, our real world simulation: 4 layers of sweatshirt material, 3 inches of clear ballistics, a 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard to represent hitting ribs or sternum, 16 more inches of clear ballistics, and then another 1/4 inch medium density fiberboard. I know that the sweatshirt material is redundant, but it doesn't take that much effort to just put that up there and stay consistent with every other test I'm doing. So 32 long, real world simulation. Let's see what this does. All right, 32 ACP. Let's see how this compares. Let's go take a look. All right, so we didn't get over penetration through our rib simulation, and that's something that if you're at 9mm and above, typically the rib simulation doesn't change a whole lot for its penetration. But if you're below that, a lot of times things that look like they're going to over penetrate actually really won't in an actual living target. So interesting here with our 32 long, we got almost exactly the same performance that we got through plain clear ballistics. And yeah, I'm confirming here what I thought with that first shot. This 32 long is a little bit keyholed there, which it indicated is tumbling through, as where our 32 ACP appears it's going through straight. So what we got here going on with our 32 long, we got just a little bit less than what we got before. Instead of 11 3/4, we're at 11 1/2 inches. So it at least stayed consistent, but there's really not a whole lot of damage going on in there. And with our 32 ACP, definitely a little bit better performance. We have very adequate penetration. It does appear that right here between 6 and 8 inches it did tumble around, and the bullet is backwards. But because it's a lighter bullet, it is a shorter bullet from base to nose. So if it does tumble, it's more like a round ball tumbling, and it doesn't really lower that penetration that much, as where your longer football shaped 32 long, when it tumbles, it's very wide when it's lengthwise, so it's going to reduce that penetration a lot. But with our 32 ACP, we are right there at 16 1/2 inches of penetration. So I'm going to call this, even though I love revolver cartridges, our 32 ACP is way better here, way more consistent, straight through that rib simulation, good penetration. It just is a lot better here than that 32 long. So between both of these here, I would pick that 32 ACP. You can hold up to 8 rounds in that little pistol versus 6 in that revolver, and it's a lot smaller package, and it's doing better. So very, very nice there. Wasn't expecting to see such a difference here, but we did, and part of that is because that 32 ACP is more powerful than a lot of the ones I've tested. I was not expecting to see such better performance. Interesting. Let's pull these out of the block take a close-up look at them, then I'll shoot our steel, see what kind of practical accuracy and shootability I can get with these. So before I pull these bullets out of the block, I want to address something that I keep getting all the time. You know, this is the bottom of the block, that's the top, front, back. I just have it long ways so you can see it here, but you know, our 32s were up here. 32 ACP, I should say. A lot of people will see this from the side view here and be like, you shot through the same channel, not valid. Look at that. You shot through the same one with that MDF shot of that 32 ACP that you just shot through in plain gel. Well, here's a view from the top of that block. Our first 32 ACP was here. Our second one was here about 3 inches over to the right. It did arc in and get to about 1.5 inches away from that other channel there, but this is not going through the same channel as that, just because you see that and you don't understand three-dimensional things. So just thought I would share that. All right, so here's a close-up look at our bullets going through plain gel, our 32 ACP here and our 32 long over here. So our nice long here, 32 long, lead round nose. Not a whole lot of deformation. 32 ACP, there's going to be none, obviously. It's not a lot of power. True full metal jacket, so it's not going to deform, but that's actually a good thing with a test like this, because when you're talking really low powered cartridges, you want to deform them less so they go deep enough. Because what happens if you deform a bullet, here's our MDF shots, you know, that nose flattened a little bit and the bullet is bent a little bit, so it's going to go in, and because it's kind of long, it's wanting to kind of tumble a little bit. Then it hits that rib simulation, kind of skewed there, and then it wants to go through kind of sideways, and it limits its penetration quite a bit. So there is definitely a lot of deformation with this 32 long. Not great overall. With that 32 ACP, even going through that rib simulation, there's no change to that bullet compared to going through plain gel. So a lot more consistent with a full metal jacket versus a 32 long. Lead round nose. Now I know they do make FMJ 32 longs, but the lead is really quite common, and it's what I had on hand. It's just as common as the full metal jacket, so I'm trying to really take something that is more traditional, which is this, and compare it to what has traditionally been 32 ACP, and we can see some differences there. But you know, those differences would still play out even with the full metal jacket, because the length of these bullets are kind of too long for the power level they're working with. But with these, you know, even if they tumble, they're not that long, so they're not that wide going through sideways, so they can continue to penetrate quite well. So that's a close-up look at those bullets. All right, 14 yards from the target. I just want to see what kind of practical shootability I can get with these. Now, this revolver is quite a bit larger than this pistol. And a lot of people are going to be like, well, that's not fair, fair. And it's like, well, in doing these type of things, you know, that's not really a good word to use, because nothing really is ever fair, especially if they're different platforms. And this is about as small as you can go in a revolver. So, you know, the fact this is a lot smaller, a lot thinner, everything, you know, there's not much I can do about that. But we'll see what I can do. 14 yards from the target. I'll just get a front sight picture, pop these off as fast as I think I can hit the target. So 32 long. Let's see what I can do here. All right, definitely very shootable. But we got 6 rounds there. Let's see what we got here with our 32 ACP. Couple extra rounds there. A little bit harder to shoot, but honestly not that much difference. You know, twice versus almost nothing isn't really a lot when it comes to recoil. So yeah, very low with our 32 long, because that revolver's heavier. With this, just a little bit more because the pistol's lighter, but it's not a big difference. Let me back it up just a little bit and fire a few rounds just for some fun. All right, 40 yards from the target just for fun. I only have a few rounds of these 32 longs left, because that was from a box I had from a while ago. But let's see what I can do with our 32 long from 40 yards. All right, so that first shot, I think I shot below the target because I was thinking these are going to jump up and go high, so I aimed kind of below the target, and I think that's probably just where it hit because the other two hit right where I aimed. So not bad overall. 32 ACP. I've heard a lot of people say these pistols don't shoot very well and the bullets tumble and you really can't shoot beyond 5 yards or you won't hit your target. See if I can make any hits at all from 40 yards with our 32 ACP. So accuracy itself wasn't a problem. It's just my point of aim and impact there. You know, I was aiming basically center, and those first few shots I missed, and then I started aiming right about the shoulder here of that silhouette. Then I started making some hits. So I think it's just, you know, the point of impact and where they're wanting to go wasn't hitting. Let me back up to 75 yards just with this, just for fun. Why not? I think it's fun. And see if I can make any hits with this. All right, 75 yards from the target. Remington UMC 71 grain. Kel-tec P32. I'll probably miss a good majority of these shots because the sights are almost non-existent and the sight radius is pretty much equal to if this were like a 1.5 inch revolver. Just very, very small sights, little nubs here, but I'll do my best. See if I can hit with this 32 ACP. That's silly. So almost half of them. The last two hits I made, I was actually aiming at the head on that silhouette. But I did see a little bit of indication that there may be some sort of wobbling around because some were hitting way above the target, and then I saw one hit really low. I know I didn't jerk the trigger that much to cause that much of a difference there. Every time I do something like this, I think about that guy. I purchased this while it was deer season, so I wasn't out in the woods shooting. So I was watching videos on it before I shot it, and there's a guy that said you can't shoot beyond 7 yards because the bullets will tumble. So it is impossible to hit anything beyond 7 yards with this. And of course, that was the first thing I did when I came out and shoot it, see if I can hit from some distance. And I found that that was definitely not true. But funny when people say stuff like that. But looking at this, I'm going to say if I had to recommend a 32 ACP to somebody, this would probably be it. I did test the Federal Hydroshock deep hollow points, and those did pretty well, but overall, this would probably be more adequate for most people. It just had a good amount more velocity than most. You know, I would say probably 75, 80 feet per second more velocity than your typical 32 ACP, but no more recoil. And sometimes you see that, and that's one thing about cartridges people don't always understand. You know, so the pressures can change, the different powders can change. You might not necessarily feel more recoil because you have more power. And what I'm seeing with this is we had enough adequate power to go through our rib simulation perfectly straight and not over penetrate. So I'm going to say this is actually a pretty good option overall. I'm going to say our UMC is better than any other full metal jacket I've tested, so it's going to reliably penetrate. So this is going to be the round, finally a good round that's working well in this thing. And being a full metal jacket, it's going to be very reliable, and you're not going to get, you know, rim lock or anything like that. So, and the price wasn't that bad. You know, 50 round boxes, not really a whole lot different than 38 special prices. So yeah, I'm going to say this is the round that people should be carrying until I can find something that's better performing than this. Not bad performance overall. Now our 32 long, just kind of mediocre performance. I'm not really seeing anything with that is very good. We had pretty subpar penetration and just not a whole lot of damage in there. So I would avoid that. But this would be a great cartridge for like a little backup pistol like this, or even your primary. Not bad overall. So interesting test. That's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.